This is the MHFi podcast with Carl Jensen and Doug Cunnington. We have authentic conversations about the journey to Fi, health, happiness, and some very odd tangents. We interview Fi experts, side hustlers, people on their way to Fi, and those who have reached the other side. Join us every week, and if you want the show notes and links and all that other stuff, head over to milehighfi.com.
Welcome to the Mile High Fi podcast. Hello, world, and hello, Vermont. My name is Carl Jensen, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Doug Cunnington.
And I said hello, Vermont, because I'm here with someone, a Vermontian. Is that what you call yourself, or is there some other name, Kyle?
Vermonter.
Vermonter. Okay, so tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Kyle Landis-Marinello. I'm a lifelong Vermonter, and I'm an environmental lawyer. I've done public interest, environmental, and energy law my whole career. And I got into personal finance and investing a few years ago and ended up researching it and writing a book about it. And then met both you guys at the economy conference last fall.
Yeah, and I think the first place we met was the infamous Skyline Chili. That's right. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, me and my buddy Flynn showed up there, and a group of you guys were having the infamous Skyline Chili. I did not partake myself, but I heard rave reviews.
So you never tried it. You were in Cincinnati, and you did not do, as they do in Rome, or however that saying goes, you did not try the Skyline Chili the whole time you were there.
Yep. So it's I have a good reason. So as a environmental lawyer, a long time ago, I actually gave up eating beef because of the environmental impacts it has. And so I have no problem with anyone who eats beef. I don't preach it or anything. I eat everything else, but I haven't eaten beef in a couple of decades. So that's why I couldn't try the chili.
Yeah, we're going to go to economy again next year, and my family might come along, and my daughters are both vegetarians, and I want them to have the Skyline Chili. So I'm trying to, I don't know, I can't see them adopting a vegetarian version anytime soon.
I think there is one. There was a late night, and someone had leftovers. I had a couple drinks that whole day. And apparently I ate some of the vegetarian chili dog, something or other.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was. It just looked like cold, food.
Okay. So Kyle, you have no excuse should you come back to economy in 2023.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll eat the vegetarian version.
Yeah. So we had
made it sound so enticing.
Yeah.
It doesn't look appetizing if you see it, but I liked it. A lot of people hate it. But anyway, we had a super good time hanging out. So Doug and I both wanted to get you on the podcast. And finally, here we are after all these months. What has it been? About 6 months. And you have a book, and you've got all these really funny stories in your book. And the one that stuck out to me, I was trying to figure out which one I would like you to tell, but I really thought that your suit story, I think you had an interview to clerk for an appellate court judge, correct me if I'm wrong, and you needed to get your suit jacket cleaned. How did that go?
Yeah. So this was an example of taking frugality a little too far. And I had an interview coming up with the Vermont Supreme Court, and I realized my suit jacket definitely needed a cleaning. And so I called a local dry cleaner, and they told me it was going to cost $20 to get it done. And I thought that was an exorbitant fee to clean a suit jacket. And so I Googled how to do this myself and learned that you can just get some soap and fill up a couple inches of water in the tub and wash your suit that way. So, which seems like I should have been skeptical of to begin with, because it's clearly not dry cleaning when you're dunking the whole thing in your bathtub. But I gave it a try. And then what I'd read was you don't want to hang the suit up when it's wet, because that will ruin the shoulders of it and the fit. And so I got out some towels and laid my suit jacket down on the floor so it could dry. And then I went in another room, and a few minutes later I came back, and our golden retriever had decided this was a nice, cool place to lie down on that summer day. And is there lying on top of my suit jacket, getting the well-known wet dog smell all over it. So I have to take it back into the bathtub and wash it again. And this time it's like, okay, I clearly just have to hang it up and the shoulders will get ruined, but that's better than having the wet dog smell. And so I hang it up in the hallway. And then that night I'm making dinner and we were making baked fish for dinner. And I open up the oven and I see the fumes waft out of it. And they go directly into the suit jacket, which was hanging up right near our oven. And at that point, I realized I probably should have just spent the $20.
So what happened after that? Did you go to your Supreme Court clerk interview smelling like baked fish with an oddly shaped suit because you had to hang it up on a hanger?
Yes, in short, yes. They didn't have remote interviews then. I wish they did. I probably would have fared better. But and actually, I did end up getting. Well, no, I think I did not get the job that year, but I reapplied the following year with a properly dry clean suit and did get it that time around.
Man. Have you ever tried to clean something like that that's not supposed to be clean like that?
Yeah, actually, I do it all the time. I think I'm trying to think of an example. Just like shirts, trying to get the stains out. Okay. I've got a better example.
I was going to say I'll buy you some time, like traveling, and I think like the ex officio underwear. You know what I'm talking about, Kyle? Mm-hmm. So I think they even have it on the packaging where you can like wash your underwear in the sink, and then you like squeeze it out, and then you roll it up in a towel like a burrito, and then you step on it to help dry it a little bit. Don't do that with a suit jacket. I think that's going to mess up the seams a little bit in the press. And then you could hang it up, but it's mostly dry at that point after you roll it up. You are supposed to kind of do that, but occasionally, not when we were roommates, Carl, but occasionally if I'm traveling and I'm traveling light, I'll do that.
Yeah, I actually do the same thing. I hate carrying too much baggage. If I can put everything in my backpack, I will. And sometimes you're gone away for like 10 days and I can't fit 10 days worth of stuff in there. So I'll just be doing my underwear like in the sink at the hotel. And my kids will be like, Dad, what are you doing? I'm like, just washing my underwear, kids. Like, you're gross. I'm not brushing my teeth in there. We need a new hotel room.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. I don't take it back.
Have you ever had to buy new underwear because you ran out of clean pairs?
You know, it's funny. I think I actually told Doug this story. The one thing I usually forget to pack is my underwear when I go on trips. And we're getting way too deep too early, or way too disgusting too early. But I think at that time I've usually gone without the unfurnished basement and just foregone the underwear for that duration of my vacation. It's kind of like self-punishment. I'm like, you idiot, I will not allow you to buy more underwear.
Yeah.
You're going to just get chafed. And
well, I was going to say, you did ask if you could borrow my underwear when we were rooming, and I didn't think much of it. I was like, sure, man, just help yourself.
Yeah, you offered me I think they're My Little Kitty or Hello Pony. They're kind of like those underoos from our childhood.
They were small. They were small, yeah.
They were small, but they were pink with those rainbows on it with the ponies. But I think I got Pinkie Pie.
I didn't watch that, but okay, yeah, that got weird faster than we thought. So we do have money topics to get to.
Yeah, we're actually going to talk about money today, and we're going to talk about your book in a bit. But I'm going to refer to it often when I ask these questions. And one of my favorite parts were all your stories. It is not a boring personal finance book, but you mix these anecdotes and stories about your dad in this book. So your dad was a super smart guy. If I remember correctly, he skipped 2 grades and he got a full scholarship to Princeton when he was 16, but he thought that was too fancy. You said, I think the quote in the book was he liked to wear sweatpants. So he decided to go to Harvard instead, which I think took him 4 decades to pay off the loans. Are all the details of what I just said correct?
Yes, that was an accurate summary. He went to Harvard at the age of 16 and one of the smartest people I know. And I have a great relationship with my dad. I love him dearly and think the world of him. And he's been an amazing dad and continues to be an amazing dad. But he has always been terrible with money, and he knows it, and our whole family knows it. And when I really learned more about personal finance and what to do and what not to do, it became even clearer that for just about every lesson in personal finance, I had a story of my dad doing precisely the opposite. And I found that to be a good lens to talk about the topic. I think it does. I did try to make it entertaining. I figure no one learns anything if they're falling asleep. And so you have to keep people's attention. And I also find my dad's stories a good reminder that there's no shame in being bad with money. It's not a reflection on your intelligence. My dad's an example of that. Some of the smartest people in the world don't know what they're doing with money. And a lot of us are just figuring it out. And a lot of the systems are set up so that we can't figure things out, so that we do it wrong, so that we pay big fees to banks and credit card companies, and even a lot of financial advisors that overcharge for fees. And a lot of those groups have a vested interest in people not figuring this out on their own.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I don't want you to tell all the stories from the book. There's so many good ones in there. The chain mail one, Kyle was actually a model and his royalties got signed away. So he'd probably be a multi-million. No, I'm just kidding. He'd have more money if it wasn't for that. But the one story, if you don't mind, that I would like you to tell, and then we'll get into more money talk, is the pinball machine / unplugged freezer. If you could tell that one really quick.
Sure. Yeah. And you mentioned me being a model. I think that's a slight exaggeration, and maybe the podcast listeners will believe it, but the people watching the YouTube video, I don't think will. But yeah, there are a couple of stories in the book about my dad and pinball machines. But the one you're referencing is the one that I was really amazed. My parents' marriage survived it. So my mom was a big time gardener, loves to do that. She still does a lot of gardening, and had just harvested tons of green beans and all sorts of vegetables from the garden and fruits, and put them in a big freezer down in the basement. And she goes down there one day in the winter to get some ingredients for a meal that she's making. And she opens up the freezer and everything is completely thawed and ruined. And so my mom's just devastated. This has happened. All the work she had spent all summer on that food, and she can't believe the freezer broke. And so she's trying to just see what went wrong and poking around in the back, and she sees the freezer didn't break. It's been unplugged. And in its place is the cord for my dad's pinball machine.
And it was this Elvira pinball machine that he just showed up with one day, right? And you said it had some kind of sexual innuendo to it, I think. Elvira, I barely remember that from my childhood, but she had very large breasts, right? And I'm sure that was emphasized in the pinball machine.
So that was actually a later pinball machine that my dad got. So that's why I said there were multiple pinball machine stories. So this was a slightly less offensive pinball machine that had been plugged into where my mom had her freezer.
Yeah, you're right, though. It's Mistress of the Night. I was a big Elvira fan as a young boy. So
all young boys probably were.
Yeah.
You said something interesting a moment ago when we talked about your dad and being poor with money, and that is that the forces that want us to spend money are much more powerful than the forces telling us to save money. And especially back then when he was young, he didn't have access to the internet or things like that to find the truth like we do. And even then, I'm sure it's difficult. We drive around town, and I think there's a couple different high fee investment places around town. I won't say their name, but you don't see anyone standing on a street corner telling you to save money or invest in low-cost index funds. But do you think if your dad was born out, do you think he would have been different just because he would have had access to the information?
Honestly, no, I doubt he would have been different because I think for him, he's smart enough. He could have found that information out if he really were interested in it. But I think his approach to money is often he just doesn't like to think about it. It's not what he wants to spend his time doing. And so, yeah, I don't think it's as much a matter of the information not being there. But I would say for people who do want to spend their time learning about this, it is way easier to do that now. And there is a lot more transparency. And a lot of the industries have had to change, sometimes because they're forced to by Congress or state governments saying, no, you really can't charge fees you haven't told people you're going to charge. And sometimes it's just competition among the industries that, do you remember we used to all pay for checking accounts just to have one. And then some banks started saying, no, here's free checking if you save this amount of money in your savings account. And then the other banks had to follow suit. And so some of that has happened. But there's still a lot of traps out there. And I spent about 8 years at the Vermont Attorney General's office in the Environmental Protection Division. And some of my coworkers there were in consumer protection, and they were routinely bringing cases against different industries for same day pay loan frauds and things like that, where they just extract as much money as possible often from the people who can least afford it.
So when did you realize that you needed to learn more about money? Were you like a teenager, or was it once you hit, adult age and such?
Yeah, it was much more adult age. I think as a teenager, I did know I had to be careful with money. And when I went off to college, and everyone kind of learned some of those basic lessons, and I didn't learn the formalities. I would basically just try to not spend more than than I needed to, and just do stupid college stuff at times. Like someone offered to pay for my entire meal at a Japanese restaurant if I swallowed the entire golf ball of wasabi. And, as a college student, it's like, yeah, I'll take that trade off. And little did I know I'd never be able to eat wasabi again after that incident. So that was about the extent of my knowledge on money early on, was just be careful with it. And then as I got older, it was really just in the last 5 years or so that I started to see I was approaching the end of my 10 years in the public service loan forgiveness program. And I was going to hit that moment where I actually had all of my law school loans forgiven by the federal government. And that motivated me to learn a lot more about finances generally, and how to get our family's financial house in order.
Perfect. And can you talk about that program? I get a lot of phone calls and voicemails, and I think it's the same people no, I'm just kidding. I think it's different scammers out there. But can you talk about that program and tell the story of your experience with it?
Yes. So I knew I wanted to do environmental law, and I wanted to do the public interest side of it, which does not pay as well as the corporate side of it. And when I was applying to law schools, I applied to ones that had a loan forgiveness program through the actual law school. And I ended up at the University of Michigan Law School, and they have a great loan forgiveness program there. And when I graduated law school, I was near the top of my class. Michigan's a top 10 law school. I was on law review. I did all the things that set you up to get a job at a big law firm that pays at the time, it was with bonuses. Some of my colleagues were making 200 grand right off the bat. But that wasn't the path I wanted to take. I wanted to be doing work I felt good about and I was passionate about. So I went to state government in Vermont. My starting salary was $40,000. So a lot less than what my colleagues in school got. And, but I had access to this loan forgiveness program. And so during the next 10 years after law school, Michigan would help pay my loans as they were coming due. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it. And then when I hit the 10-year mark of public service work, I was able to apply for the loan forgiveness program that the federal government has, and had the small sum of $230,000 wiped out entirely, and no taxes due on it either. And so it's a really good program. It worked out well for me. It did exactly what it's set up to do, which is allow people to choose the work that they care about, not just the high-paying jobs that would have been needed to pay my loans if I didn't have access to a program like that.
So I have one follow-up question. Did you really eat a golf ball size piece of wasabi?
Yes.
How did it? That must have burned going down, but did that burn coming out the exit too? Or
it's a repressed memory, Carl.
Well, we'll get you some therapy, and we'll bring those memories back to the surface so you can deal with them. I suspect you might have some ongoing trauma, but okay.
Yeah, maybe if I dealt with it, I'd be able to eat wasabi again. That would be good.
Now, so you spent, well, obviously you're on kind of a mission, right? So do you know, or do you remember when you decided, hey, I don't want to go into like corporate law. I want to, serve in some way. And I'll leave it kind of open. I'm curious if you just always wanted to do that, or if something happened and you're like, you know what, this is wrong, and I want to work on the on the good guy side.
Yeah, it was. I mean, my interest in the law really was environmental law, kind of from the get-go, and I think that comes from growing up in Vermont. It's a beautiful outdoors here. We don't allow billboards on our highways. You go on hikes and mountain biking in the mountains. I did a lot of whitewater kayaking. That was my big sport. That's what led to what Carl referred to as my modeling career. Was I was in a commercial for Kellogg's Frosted Flakes when I was 15. And they grabbed me because of my kayaking, not because of my looks. And so I knew that was what I was passionate about and what I wanted to do when I went to law school. But then there were a lot of moments where you do question it. And, my first year of law school, we had a really big group there of public service students. And then by my last year of law school, it kind of winnowed down to a much smaller subset that was actually planning to go forward and do that for our work. And I think the big turning point for a lot of people is actually after just 1 year of law school. It's a 3-year program. And after the first year, when you come back to begin the second year, there's a couple weeks when they have on-campus interviews. And at a school like Michigan, big law firms from all over the country fly HR folks there to interview people on campus. They come to the students, and it's really more the firms trying to make a pitch for those students to come work for them when they graduate. And so those jobs are kind of handed out on a platter, and they pay very well. And so that was a real test of kind of, is this what you want to do, and how committed are you? And for me, I was always committed, and I stuck with it. But I've had moments in my career also where I've questioned that path, and the one that is most memorable for me is early on, we have 3 kids, so we're a family of 5, and I started out at 40,000. We didn't have 3 kids when I started. We had 1, but then within a few years, my salary had gone up a little, but I was around 50,000, I think, by the time we had our 3rd kid. And my partner decided to stay home with the kids. And so I was supporting our whole family on that salary. And Vermont is beautiful. I love it, but it's not a cheap place to live. And so things were really tight. And I had a day at work where I was meeting with my boss for my annual review. And I thought it was a done deal that I was getting the maximum raise the state could give, because when I had met with him the year before, he had given me a bonus because he said we need to wait another year for your salary raise. And then I had this meeting on my salary and was expecting to get the maximum raise I could. I knew I'd been working really hard, doing really good work. And he said that he wanted to give me that raise, but that they couldn't do it this year because they'd given me the bonus the year before. I had to wait another year. And it just caught me off guard. Like I wasn't expecting much. I never expected to make much money at the state, but I was expecting they'd do what they could for me. And then all of a sudden I find out this raise I thought I was going to get isn't actually happening. And I go home that night and I'm walking from our driveway to our back porch. And as I get to the back porch, I see this cardboard tray with eggs and cheese and peanut butter on it, which the state of Vermont had delivered to our home because our family qualified for food assistance. And it was just this really hard moment where it's kind of like, I knew things were going to be difficult. I knew things were going to be tight. But it hit me how much I'd given up by taking the path that I had taken. And I didn't change my mind. If anything, it probably committed me more to it. But it's a struggle for sure when you do that route.
And how long ago was that?
So that was probably 10 years ago or so. Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah. I mean, I am definitely paid better now. It's still about the same ratio as when I graduated law school, and that I think if I wanted to go the corporate route, I'd probably get 4 to 5 times the salary that I currently get. But it is, I've worked my way up to a management position, and so it's not nearly as tight as it was then.
Man, that sucks. No, I'm just, that's, do you ever talk to any of your old colleagues who might have went to these high-powered firms making $200,000 their first year? I imagine some of them are probably partners now, probably with 7-figure salaries, right? They've probably sold their soul to do that, but do you ever keep in touch with these people?
Yeah, or I'll go to conferences. I was at a conference last week of environmental lawyers, and most of the folks there are partners at big law firms. And it's a very different lifestyle. I think a lot of them are happy with their choices. A lot of them regret it though, because it can be pretty soul sucking. And I definitely had colleagues who went to those firms for a few years and maybe got their student loans paid off and then burned out pretty quickly and started looking for other options.
Yeah, it's kind of sad what you said about struggling and all that, but in a part of your book, I won't tell what the details are, but you talk about your wedding. And when I read that, I'm like, holy cow, we tried to keep our wedding pretty simple, but I love how you did it. The Crocs were awesome. There's a lot of value to living simply and avoiding jumping into the race to be partner and all that kind of stuff too. I don't know. I think I would choose your life over that other stuff, over those other things as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I I did wear Crocs at my wedding. There is a reason to it, which if you read the book, you'll read. I also was dared by a coworker at one point to wear my Crocs made work shoes to an argument I was giving at the Vermont Supreme Court. And it's Vermont. So in Vermont, hiking boots are considered work shoes. And so I figured these Crocs work shoes would suffice, and did wear them to the Vermont Supreme Court and made an oral argument in them. So I may be the only lawyer who's had done an oral argument in Crocs.
Okay, that is so good. We got to move on to the next section. But before we do, what color Crocs were they, and did anyone notice it? Or
so they were actually Crocs' attempt at a dress shoe. So don't get me wrong; these weren't like the ones with holes in them, and they were black. So they, if you did look too closely, they looked almost like a regular work shoe.
Oh my God.
And I was going to say, I have Birkenstocks. I don't have any Crocs yet, although my interest is piqued a little bit. But I have some Birkenstock clogs that are black. And like, if you don't pay attention, like you said, Kyle, you're like, those are just like black shoes. Looked a little scuffed up. Maybe Doug needs to take care of his shoes, but they're all right. I don't have dress shoes otherwise. So
I'm definitely pro Croc. Our neighbor happens to do marketing for them. Shout out to Dana. And she's like, hey, you guys want some Crocs? So now we have Crocs everywhere. And yeah, I've always enjoyed them, even before I met my neighbor. So people talk down on them, but I'm pro Croc.
All right.
Let's talk about financial independence. And this seems like a weird conversation in light of what you just told us. It doesn't, unless you get some side hustles going, I don't see an early retirement for you, Kyle, but maybe you've got fulfillment in everything you want in life already. So maybe you don't need that. But so you talked a little bit about how you learned about money. How did you learn about financial independence? Because that's kind of the next level up from learning about money and investing.
Yeah. So I liked reading nonfiction, and we had a Vicki Robbins book, Your Money in Your Life, hanging around the house. And I picked it up and read it cover to cover and was just fascinated by that concept. For those who haven't read it, the main theme is that you're trading your life energy, your time, for money. And when you spend things, it's like spending that amount of time. And then soon I wanted something else. And the next book I found was a Robert Kiyosaki book. And I read that, and it was just a completely polar opposite perspective, and a lot of stuff in that I disagreed with, and this was before some of the more recent stuff that he's done, where which I won't get into, but he's really gotten extreme on some things, and I was fascinated by that, those differences of opinions of kind of your money or your life is focused on being frugal, on lowering your expenses and finding a pathway to early retirement through that. And then this other approach of kind of maximize money wherever you can. Don't worry about whether you're doing good or evil along the way. Just get your money however you can and spend it and develop this rich mindset, because that will force you to make more money. And so then I looked for other resources, kind of a more in-between approach, and then got into podcasts and listened to a bunch of those, including the Bigger Pockets Money podcast was an early one I really enjoyed. And just found the topic fascinating. You know, money comes up in everything that we do. And I wrote the book because the way I process a lot of information is just through research and writing. That's what lawyers do primarily, despite what you see on TV. We're only in the courtroom once in a while. Most of the work is research and writing. And so that's how I process information. That's what I wanted to do with this. So I'd remember the best lessons and forget the bad ones.
Yeah. So you don't want to troll him, but I will a little bit, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and everyone calls that book out, but I wasn't too impressed by it either. And that, I don't know how this happened, but for some reason, that guy or someone on his team wrote a blog post about me and how stupid we were with money. And then he trolled me on
You
Twitter.
specifically?
Yeah. There's a whole blog post. I'll see if I can find it. I'm like, holy shit, this is kind of cool. Like this celebrity type dude wrote a post, but the thing he didn't do, he said like our name, but he didn't like link to it at all. So we got all the hate, I guess, but none of the potential link juice from it. So I'm like, dude, you could have at least like linked to us or something. If you're going to call us out and say we're stupid, I'd appreciate a backlink.
That's cool, man. Yeah. It's like a validation when you have haters.
It was kind of cool. I didn't like him that much. So the fact that he didn't like me kind of validated everything. So yeah, once you get haters, you've kind of made it. So it was a special moment for me. But
yeah. Well, and I remember, the part that turned me off the most from his book was he was talking about being a landlord and how if a renter can't make rent one month, how this is a great thing because then you can just kick them out and you've made all the money that you've made along the way. And and it was actually, no, it was worse. This is when you set up a rent to own situation. And so these are people who are trying to actually work their way towards owning the home. And they've maybe paid $30,000 towards it. And then they miss a single payment. And he explained how this was great because then you can kick them out and bring someone new in. And it was just so cold and so just disconnected from the realities that are going on the other side of a transaction like that, of what that person must be experiencing when they're unable to make that payment. And so that, he's never been very impressive to me.
Yeah. And I'm the worst Fi person because I haven't read most of the books that we end up talking about, including Rich Dad Poor Dad or any of Kiyosaki's books. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't like it based on everything that I've heard, but I'm curious, this question may go nowhere, Kyle. Is there anything from that book or others that you read from Robert Kiyosaki that you think is a good idea? Because I'm sure we could grab pieces from all this rich, knowledge bank and take the good parts that work for us and then just leave out the parts that are terrible that you don't like. So anything that you found valuable?
I did find it valuable to look at the other side of frugality. I think frugality, you can kind of get stuck in a vacuum and just be thinking like, how do I minimize expenses on everything? And there's a lot to be said for stepping back at times and looking at what are the things I really care about, and is this actually money well spent, and should I actually spend more than I was planning on, because that's going to be a high quality item that's going to give me more happiness going forward for a long time. And so, I mean, just one example that comes to mind is when people are buying a cell phone, they might skimp on the memory, thinking, I don't want to spend that extra $100. But in the long run, spending the extra $100 to get more memory on your phone could help out in all sorts of ways. You don't have to stress about if you're taking too many photos or how many podcasts or music you put on it. And your phone may end up lasting an extra year or two because you haven't run out of memory. And so I think that the idea that you should be thoughtful about what you spend money on and be willing to spend money on the things you care about. There's a lot to be said for that.
Cool. And before we move on to the next little section here, any other books or blogs that were really influential when you were first discovering some of the concepts?
Yeah. So for me, it's books. I'm not a big blog reader. No offense, Carl. So your blog's wonderful. But that's just, I'm on a computer all day for my work. And so for me, it's much more relaxing to be actually looking at a physical book. And then podcasts as well. I did list a ton of books in the back of mine that I read along the way that I got lessons out of. Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich is another excellent one. He presents everything in a really entertaining way. Tanya Hester has an excellent book, Work Optional, and she did a more recent second book that gets more focused on social responsible ways of consuming. And that's a great book as well. And so, yeah, I tried to just take in as much information as possible. And anything you pick up, it's going to have a valuable lesson in it. It's probably going to have something stupid in it too. You have to be on the lookout for that. And sometimes it's just funny, stupid, like one of David Bach's books I got. It was a 2018 version of the book. And at the end of it, he had a checklist of expenses. So if you were trying to put together a budget, and one of the items listed on there was car phone. It's like, I think you forgot to update this when you did the most recent version. And there's also, I think it's good to be on the lookout for, there's a lot of information out there by people who have lived very privileged lives and they haven't actually experienced the circumstances that so many others are going through, and they can't relate to those circumstances. And so I think it's really important to read a wide variety of books and blogs from a diverse group of authors and writers.
Cool. And before I kick it back to Carl, just as a reader, it sounds like you're an avid reader. Do you ever not finish a book? You get a couple chapters in and you're like, I got the point. This is bad. I'm out.
Very rarely. Every once in a while that's happened, but I'm pretty much, if I pick up a book, I'm reading it all the way through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you think it's because you have very good book selection, or once you start, you're like, I may as well finish?
Yeah. I think it's probably my type A personality of wanting to check the box of having got through it. So I will admit, if I find something like painful to get through, I'll start reading very quickly and probably not taking everything in. Or if it's an audiobook, that's when I find myself in the app looking at like, I'm on 2 times. Is there a 3 times setting? 3 times speed to get through it.
Yeah. Gotcha. And then Carl, do you ever quit books? I do occasionally now, not too often. Usually, obviously, I try not to pick books that are going to suck, but sometimes I'm like, I'm not connecting with this author. This book's not for me. So do you ever stop?
Yeah, I never used to, but now I do that all the time. I have a recent example. I'm trying to think of what it is. And sometimes I'll stop and then I'll pick them back up. Oh, it was a book on mindfulness and it was pretty good. It just kind of lost me. It didn't hold my interest. And it might not even be the book. It might be a reflection on me or me just being too busy at the time.
Yeah. It's just like sit quiet and breathe. That's the whole book, right?
Yeah. It's kind of funny. It's a book on mindfulness and I wasn't able to get through it. I think there's that's on me, not the book.
Yeah. Doug, one thing I've started doing lately that I never thought I would do when I was younger is rereading books. And because I like to get as much information as possible. It always struck me as like, why would you ever reread a book? But I have found, so a great money book that came out recently, Stacked by Emily Guy Birkin and Joe Saul-Sehy. I helped them a little with just doing a copy edit of it. And so I had read the whole thing. But then when it came out, I wanted to read it again because it was so good. And I'm doing the same with the Douglas Adams series, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I read all those probably 20 years ago. And now maybe it's because I turned 42 in a few days. I found myself picking up that series of books and rereading it and really enjoying it.
That's I haven't read any of those books. I'm more of a fiction reader these days, so I'll have to pick it up. I am 42 right now, just another month left or so.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is definitely fiction, Doug.
Yeah. I thought it was more of I watched the documentary movie version of it, but no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's. So when we were at Economy, Kyle, you talked about socially responsible investing, and I thought about this, and I remember even asking you this question. The most successful company of all time, at least it used to be, was the cigarette company. I can't remember the name of it, but if you had invested $1 in that, at one point it would have been worth 70,000 or some huge crazy number like that. So I think the question I pose to you is, and maybe before you answer, you should say what socially responsible investing is, but can you do this and still make money? Can you still be competitive with even an S&P 500 index fund?
Yes, and it's a good question, and this is something I do think it's important for people to be looking at, and I think it's kind of a gap in a lot of the personal finance and FIRE stuff that's out there that everyone kind of gloms onto VTSAX or VTI, these big index funds that are low fee and go across the board, investing in every company that's there. And that's a great way to invest. Again, disclaimer, this is not investing advice, but a lot of people have explained why you often do much better investing in low fee index funds relative to individual stock picks. But what's interesting about socially responsible investing and the funds that are often called ESG funds for environmental, social, and governance factors is that some of them are available now that do the same thing, that are these low fee index funds across the board, but they just pull out a few of the companies, like the tobacco companies, the weapons manufacturers, oil and gas companies often get pulled out for environmental reasons. And they also look at how do companies treat their workers. And if a company is too anti-union, then that might be disqualifying for these funds. And so you're still getting a broad array, you're getting all the benefits of low-fee index funds, but you're not exposed to the risk that some of those companies might have from doing something that the world generally frowns upon, and or doing something that doesn't treat their workers well. And so there's some interesting research that has come out in recent years that shows that socially responsible investing can actually do better than your run-of-the-mill investing. And it makes sense just kind of at a gut level to me that, when you're looking at the fundamentals of a company, a key factor is what they're doing sustainable. Is this product going to be around 20 years from now? And are their key employees, the people who are actually making the decisions, making this company work and thrive, are they being treated well, being paid well, being taken care of, so that they're going to be around? Or is this a company that's going to lose all of its best employees because they don't take care of them, or they have discriminatory policies? So yeah, I think socially responsible investing in the long run could do better than ignoring those factors. And but ultimately, that's not the reason that I do it. The reason I do it is that I feel better about my investments when I'm taking those factors into account. And so, yeah, Carl, I think when you asked this question, I compared it to the same choices I've made in my career, which we've talked about already, that, the legal profession, by the math, 50% of the time you win and 50% of the time you lose. That's just anything that goes in front of a court. It's going to be decided one way or the other. And I always wanted to be doing work that I felt good about the 50% of the time that I won. I never wanted to be in the situation where I won a case and then I realized as I went to bed that night that the world was worse off for it. Yeah. And so I take the same approach to my investing that whether my socially responsible funds do better or do worse, I'm going to sleep better at night. So that's what works for me.
Cool. One quick follow-up. I was talking to a friend and we were discussing Warren Buffett. And I believe Warren Buffett's plan is to give away like 95 or 99% of his wealth, but he's going to do it all after he died. And my friend had a pretty good point. He's like, well, why is he waiting till he dies? He's got tens of billions of dollars. Wouldn't he want to give some of it away while he's still alive so he can see some of the good he's doing? And I think of Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Mackenzie. I don't know what her last name is, and that's exactly what she's doing now. And that seems like a much more gratifying approach. And maybe that's what people in the FI community should consider. I think a lot of us are going to end up with more money than we expected. And I'm one of them just because we tend to be pretty fiscally conservative and we're very cautious. And that's kind of what I look forward to doing. I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment. I look forward to giving the money away while I'm still around so you could see the good it's doing in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And yeah, it's really interesting. I think in the FI world, people are watching what they spend very carefully, but then you go to an event like Economy and when we're hanging out, it's like whoever was closest to the door would go and get food and they'd buy it for everyone, or go and buy the next round of beer and get it for everyone. And I mean, this is a really generous community. It's a really generous group of people. And it's also a group of people that is looking beyond just kind of what's the day-to-day corporate life that is generally set up for a lot of people in the US, and what's the impact? What do I want to be doing with my time, this limited time that I have in this world? And I think that makes people more generous and makes people think more about how they impact others. And giving is always a big part of any path to financial independence. And in fact, just about every book that I read talked about that, and how giving is important, and that's not the place to save money.
Okay, well, shall we talk about the book?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and before we get into it, sign up for our email list. If you're signed up, we are going to send emails to 3 random people to receive copies of Kyle's book. So Kyle, tell us what your book is titled and what it's about.
Yeah, it's personal finance and investing, how anyone can make more, spend less, and invest wisely. And it's kind of a introductory book on the personal finance side, but it gets into more advanced stuff on the investing side. And as I said before, I just try to make it as entertaining as possible. When someone buys a book, the price they pay for it pales in comparison to the price of their time for actually sitting down and reading it. And so I always want to be respectful of that. If someone's reading something I've written, I want it to be as concise, as clear as possible, and as entertaining as possible. So that's what I did. There's a lot in there of just kind of how to save on day-to-day expenses, what to focus on, focusing on your big monthly expenses. That's often where the big gains can be made. And some simple ways to make extra money through credit card rewards points and other stuff that is out there that's pretty easy. I focus on stuff that doesn't take much time, but can have bigger gains. And then on the investing side, I try to cover what a portfolio should look like at different times in your life, and what funds to be looking for. As most stuff in the FI community, it's focused on low fee index funds. But I also did weave in some social responsible investing information into that. I don't hit people over the head with it. It's I don't think that's an effective way to get people interested in socially responsible investing, and clear that I think if it's not for you, don't think twice about it. And I don't have anything against anyone who wants to just invest with the regular principles of what they think will do the best.
And on that point, is there some blend of ESG type funds that you recommend, or how do you do it in your portfolio, for example, or can you give us an example?
Yeah. So, sometimes people recommend having traditional funds and then pulling in some ESG funds. I'm not in that camp, and I don't know anyone who is. It seems like people usually they're all traditional, or they use all ESG. And the thing is, it's actually now super easy to put together your regular 3-fund portfolio of a low-fee domestic stock fund, a low-fee international stock fund, and a bond fund as well. And you can do that with ESG, with socially responsible funds. Fidelity has a 3-fund portfolio that allows you to do all of that and have kind of a whatever mix you're looking for in your portfolio of those funds.
Got it.
You do pay a little more in fees. It kind of brings it from like a 0.04 to a 0.14.
Okay.
But it's still way better than most of the other funds that are out there.
And to dig just a little bit deeper, this is not investment advice, but in a spreadsheet, hypothetically, what returns would you look at? And can we compare that to what we might expect to like a VTSAX or something like that?
Yeah, I do think it's comparable because, again, Fidelity's version of the ESG for domestic stocks that's what equates to the VTSAX. It tracks almost identically with VTSAX because it is basically the same. It's just a couple companies have fallen out.
Got it.
So, if next week everyone decides smoking is cool again and there's a big uptick in all the tobacco companies, then yes, they'll start diverging. VTSAX will start doing better. But at the same time, if a lot of people get frustrated by how much gas costs these days and start moving towards more electric vehicles, and oil and gas companies start seeing lower profits, then the socially responsible fund will do better.
Perfect. So it's mainly the fees of the management of having to, sort that out, which that makes sense. Okay. And a quick note, we watched a lot of like 90s movies recently. Smoking does look cool. 100%. I don't know.
My mom, she's retired now, but she was a school nurse for many decades. And she had a poster in her room of all these different animals with a cigarette hanging out of their mouth. And at the bottom, it said something like, it doesn't look any cooler when people do it either. Because the animals did not look cool.
Oh, no. It's out of context. It's not cool. I don't smoke, guys. Just so listeners, children, we're just kidding around.
I can picture it though, like a sloth hanging upside down in the tree with a dragging on a cigarette.
Just moving slow, chilling out. I like that feel.
The baby sloth is on the stomach hanging out there.
It's not just tobacco in there either. All right.
That's why they move so slow.
Okay. Lessons learned writing the book. Had you written the book before?
No, this is my first time.
Okay. How'd it go?
It was fun. I heard your interview with Brian Feraldi from a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how painful it was. And my experience was exactly the opposite. I loved doing it, and it was something I looked forward to every day. This was on top of my 9 to 5, which in the legal world is always longer hours than that. And so I wrote the whole book basically either between 11 at night and midnight, or I'd wake up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. sometimes and work on it then. And so it was hard to find time to actually do it. But when I was sitting down in front of the computer, writing the story, whether it's a lesson on money or something my dad did that had a money lesson along with it, I really enjoyed that process. I like writing, I like researching, and it was also a project that I was doing how I wanted to do it. It wasn't like my everyday work where I'm writing stuff or reviewing stuff to present to someone else. This was something that I got to do how I wanted to do it, and so it was fun.
Awesome.
Cool. Would you write another book? And if so, what would it be?
Yeah, I have thought about writing another one. I think I'll probably wait a little bit at some point. I'll probably do an update of this book, maybe next year or the year after. And I think the next book I'd be interested in writing would be about getting by doing what you think is right and kind of how to combine your moral compass with your financial interest. And, as we've talked about already, the decisions I made did not make sense from a financial perspective. The decisions I continue to make today don't make sense from a financial perspective, in that I could get a job that pays a lot more than what I currently do. But that's not the only factor. And so I think it would be fun to write about that and how to kind of balance your work life, your family, your friends, and your values.
Nice.
So as we're closing out here, what does a perfect day look like for you?
Definitely jetpacks involved. I think it would be outdoor time with friends and family and sports. I love playing ultimate frisbee, kayaking, water skiing, like go-karting, those types of things. Anything where you're really in the moment, that's what I enjoy the most. And so, when I'm out on the ultimate frisbee field, I'm not thinking about the next work project and when that's due and or what's going on in the world, the depressing news that's out there. Like, I'm in the moment and kind of getting that flow state, and same with kayaking. So kayaking is definitely in that camp, and just hanging out with friends and family and talking and sharing stupid stories and learning that Carl borrowed Doug's underwear and apparently Doug was fine with that. Like, hearing stories like that is just, I enjoy that.
Yeah, we're podcast partners. We share everything.
Yeah. And to be clear, they were clean, I think.
Yeah. Clean enough, right?
Yeah, that's what he told you.
So this has been great, Kyle. It's been good to catch up. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Twitter. I have a lot of fun with that. Maybe it's because I only discovered it a year ago, and so I haven't got burned out or frustrated with the trolls. But I'm at PF Author on Twitter. So PF standing for personal finance. And my website is personalfinanceauthor.com. Cool.
And we can't leave that alone. I'm going to ask really quick. So let's talk about your cell phone stuff. And we did a sound check, which we'll play at the end here. So how long ago did you get a cell phone?
3.5 years ago at the age of 38.
And I'm curious, with the apps and social media, like mentally, how did you cope with that? Was it overwhelming? You heard about all these things and now you have it on your phone right at your fingertips?
Yeah, I think that it wasn't for the other reason we talked about, which is that a lot of places in Vermont don't have cell phone reception. Yeah. So I wasn't actually able to be on it on a regular basis. And my partner, actually, she still doesn't have a cell phone. So she wouldn't tolerate it if I were on my phone all the time either. And yeah, I think part of it is just maybe it's the rural life that it's not as big a part of what we do in Vermont as it is if you live in a city all the time.
Interesting.
I think I want to move to Vermont.
It sounds cool.
Yeah. Hey, if you guys come anytime, my house is open. I'm happy to host you. It is a small house, and we do have 5 people and a dog, but a very comfortable futon, and I'll definitely take you on a good beer tour.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds good. I haven't been to Vermont in a while, so we're due.
It's so good. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. All right, Kyle. Well, this is awesome. We'll link up so people can find you. And thanks a lot, man.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Thank you. It's great chatting.
Thanks for listening to the show. That was the Mile High Five podcast, and I'm Doug Cunnington, the balder host, and Carl Jensen is the cool, sexy one. If you dig the show, please do 3 things for us. Number 1, tell a friend, a family member, an enemy about the show. We really don't care who you tell. Maybe forward them a specific show that you know that they will like. It's the single most helpful thing that you can do to spread the word. It's like giving us a virtual high five, and actually we don't give high fives in person, so the virtual kind's pretty good. And more importantly, your friend or family member or even your enemy will appreciate the fact that you were thinking of them. Number 2, make sure you're following or subscribed on your podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, whatever you're using, and that way you won't miss a show. And number 3, please leave us a rating and review. We read them on the show occasionally, and you might hear yours out there on an upcoming episode. Quick disclaimer, this show is not financial or legal advice. I'd actually be surprised if it sounded like it. It's really just for entertainment, and that's at least what we're hoping for. But seriously, get advice from professionals. Carl and I are just 2 guys with microphones that sit in my basement and talk. So we'll catch y'all next week. All right. So Carl, how's it going? I know you ran in. Everything good?
Yeah, it's going okay. I had another fight with my phone company this morning. If anyone knows a good low-cost provider, I'm about to switch.
Okay.
Fuck Ting.
Okay. It's a low-cost provider. What do you pay for your cell phone?
It's pretty cheap. I usually come in under $20 a month. So it's got that, but if it doesn't work, then it's super cheap because I can't do anything. So
Yeah, that's amazingly cheap. I was going to say, like many things, it's a theme in the show occasionally where I'm just like, you know what? I could probably get it cheaper, but that amount of money is kind of silly to worry about. So for the 2 of us, we pay like about $108, and I have like a cell phone plan on my watch too. So I could like make calls from my watch.
Wow. Do you ever do that? It sounds like that Dick Tracy thing or whatever, right?
Not too often, but if I go out for a jog, I'm like, I could leave the phone. And then if I've fallen and I can't get up, then I could call somebody. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's way more expensive than what you're paying, but it works.
How much data do you get for $108?
So I think it's a grandfathered plan or grandmothered, just to be open-minded. But I think it's like 6 gigs or something like that.
Okay.
Which typically we're not using that much, only if we're traveling, right? So if we travel and I'm like, I'm not going to get on this sketchy Wi-Fi, I'll just use the data. But even then, I'm like, I don't need to upload this 4K video right now.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Kyle, do they have phone service in Vermont? Have cell phones come to rural Vermont yet? Or
Yeah, I do not get a signal at my house. I could use my phone on Wi-Fi, but yeah, there's no cell signal. But I have never paid a cell phone bill.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't have one, or what's going on here? Or you just do everything over Wi-Fi?
Get a company.
I didn't get a cell phone until it's about 3.5 years ago. So I was 38 years old when I got my first cell phone, and and then it's not a personal one. I got it from work, and so I could still take it and travel with it and leave it on the table so that friends can take pictures of dinosaurs. Yeah, but yeah, that's just my my work phone.
Did work feel bad for you? They're like, hey, man, you don't have a phone. We're just going to give you one.
No, it was more they wanted to be able to reach their lawyer when they needed to. So
Yeah. That's an awesome hack. Like if you never had a phone and it's kind of freeing, like thinking about it now. We're actually going to record one today.
Yeah.
About that topic. So, okay, this is a great sound check. We could almost just keep talking about cell phone plans for the whole time. All right, hold on.